And if you ever find a bank card in Scotland, try the PIN 1967, because 9 times out of 10, that will get you that person's money out of their bank account, because it's what everyone's changing their PIN to. So.
Football. At the end of the day, football. It's a funny old game.
It's a game of two.
Comedians talking about football. Comedians talking about football. Comedians talking about football. Hello and welcome to another episode of the most self-explanatory podcast out there. This is Comedians Talking About Football, where comedians do just that. They talk about the lows, they talk about the highs, they talk about the overpriced pies and pretty much everything else that comes with supporting a football team. Now, of course, the Euros are here. Unless you're in the future, then they're not here. I was going to say if you're listening in the past as well, but that makes no sense. But listen, as we record this, we are in the build-up to Euro 2024. And of course, the first game to be played is Scotland versus the hosts. And joining me today is a comedian, is a Scotland fan, but he's wearing an Aston Villa shirt. We'll get to that. Because you know me, I don't like to keep things topical, so why not just throw a random Aston Villa shirt in there? It's Lynsey Smart. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I've just realised that for the video end of this podcast, I've got my little setup ready, and I didn't intend to have the Euro 96 shirt just hanging up there. So I do apologise for that.
That's just violence. That's a hate crime straight off the bat.
But it's good to see you've come with a Scotland scarf. Molly Scotland written on it,
yes.
but you've come in a Villa shirt as well. So they are kind of your would you say as a club they're your team or?
Well, the rule is that if you are from Scotland, you have your Scottish Premier League team, and then you have your Premier League team, so that you can actually see some goals. So you're allowed one English team as well as your Scottish team. So mine's are Aberdeen and Aston Villa. That's who I'm repping for.
Nice. So was Aberdeen like where you grew up? That's like your family club?
Yes.
Right.
So Stonehaven, just south of Aberdeen, so it's about 15 miles away, but Aberdeen's the closest city, and given there aren't as many cities that far north, like the Dons have a substantial catchment area of suitably greeting-faced people. My dad always said that if there was a goal at Pataudry, you were deafened by the sound of rustling sweetie papers.
But of course now Aston Villa. Now, where did Aston Villa come from?
Because I made the decision to marry a Villa fan.
Nice.
And so it was not optional at all. I have been escorted to Villa Park and saturated with Aston Villa facts, and then provided with a shirt of my favourite player. So...
Okay, so your favourite player. Now, I'm going to assume we are here, of course, to talk about Scotland. You are a Scotland bonny lass, of course. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So McGinn on the back of the shirt?
I'm afraid it's not. And I think my family and friends are quite disappointed that I had not selected John McGinn. But my reason is I love John McGinn to bits. I think he's fantastic. I think the centre of gravity of his arse is something of mystical magic in the midfield. But he does have a bad habit of, if something doesn't go his way, he like plays the big emotions and is all like, oh, what? It's so unfair. Even although he's the one who's just taken someone's ankles from them. You know, it's all so unfair. And that is something that frustrates me about the sport in general, is the kind of theatric side of it. I like justice. So I'm afraid the player on the back is actually Tyrone Mings.
Tyrone Mings, England international.
Exactly. And that's because when Tyrone Mings messes up, he just looks annoyed at himself, shakes his head with a sad little smile and cracks on. And I respect that.
Well, what a start to the podcast. What a bombshell straight away. We've got we're here to talk about Scotland. We've got an England international on the back. So we better jump into Scotland very quickly. So yes. Scotland, they're back in major tournaments. It all started, of course, Euro 2020. They were back in what has got to be one of They come back, they're in a group with England, and was one of the worst international games I think I've ever seen in my life.
It
But they're
was
back
such a stalemate.
It was. I mean, it was such a build-up as well because you had all the Scotland fans come to England, come to Wembley. There was it was all going viral, the stuff that was going on there, and then the game was just nothing.
Well, I think as well, what I struggled with that. So I watched it with my husband who grew up near Portsmouth. And so it was, handshake for the game, may the best team win, with him quietly confident, but trying to be respectful of his wife. And he wouldn't accept that that was a win for Scotland. I think shocking scenes.
I mean, so we're going into Euro 2024 and looking at the fixtures. I mean, that group, Switzerland, Hungary, and Germany. Germany, Scotland. Opening game. Now, in the past, that has happened before. World Cup '98, Brazil and Scotland. That they were the opening game for some reason. France didn't fancy doing the opening, and so Brazil and Scotland played the opening of France '98, 2-1 win to Brazil. Interesting game. What do you? Cat's just come in the
We have a
screen there. I
cat.
love it.
Funny. I mean, he was born in Edinburgh, so he's here to support Scotland as well.
Excellent. Oh, no, fair play. So Germany then, first game, the hardest game. What are your expectations for it?
Oh, we're going to get humped. Easy. Part of being a Scotland fan is knowing that 70% of the time you're not going to be walking away with any dignity. So I believe I have been doing a little bit of swatting for this podcast and have been informed that we have never left the group stages, but have made 8 World Cups and 3 Euros group stages. And I just feel like that's on brand for Scotland. And it's because we disagree with all of the corruption in FIFA. And so we make a stand against it by never progressing too far.
Well, look, okay, so you've got Germany. Let's say, okay, Germany win. Still Switzerland and Hungary. You've got to be quietly confident about that. I mean, if you look at the Scotland team, some good Premier League players in there. So there's enough in there to make a good squad. You've got enough in defence, midfield, good attacking players as well. You could get a couple of wins over Hungary, Switzerland, maybe even a win and a draw, and it might be enough.
I think where the Scottish team struggles is that they have all of the passion, but they don't have any top flight strikers. So like when I've watched them before, as someone who historically hadn't watched as much football, I'd come out for the odd game, and then every time Scotland's on, that is when I've tuned in. It's only in more recent years that I've watched enough football to actually be able to kind of look at the strategy of it. But Scotland is a game that's attacking in its heart, but not in its formation. So they're missing players like McCoist that we had back in the day who could just bang them in. So looking at who we've got up front, I believe Lyndon Dykes is injured, so may not be playing. The other chap, here's where it all starts to fall apart when I try and get in the detail. The other chap who's plays for Hearts, like he's a really good striker for Hearts, but he's not used to games with a pressure level above the SPL. So we've got all of these people playing for like top flight Premier League teams in the midfield and the defence, but without having that really attacking person to bang them in. So then it's relying on people like John McGinn to try and pick up that striker flack as well as doing his midfielding. And so I think that's where Scotland always falls apart, because they want to go for it, but they just don't quite have the formation to pull it off successfully, and then they just get annoyed and then they fuck it up.
Is that Lawrence Shankland you're talking about?
Yes.
Right.
I was going to call him Mr. Shankly, so thank you for saying
Mr. Shankly. Mr. Shankland, though, absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean there, but there are some real class players in there, like Robertson in there, and you do start looking through the squad and go, I was convinced, I remember thinking back in 2019, they're going to qualify for Euro 2020.
Yeah.
But let's say you go up against Germany. Now, Germany have had a tough couple of tournaments, terrible in the 2018 World Cup. I'd say very poor at Euro 2021 as well. Now, let's say you get a draw in that game against Germany on Friday, the 14th of June. You must be positive at that stage that you get a draw against Germany, who will probably find their feet then in the second or third game. You could sneak through, surely, couldn't you?
It is possible, but I think the Scottish fan attitude is to assume we're going to get gubbed and then be ecstatic when we don't.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
It's like the opposite of the English approach. The English approach is being like, it's coming home.
Yeah.
It's all ours. 3 lines. Hey. And then by like the second match, like, oh, it's a very young team. It's a very young team. Don't put pressure on the boys.
it's the thing I always related to is you look back at around the late 90s and what the I think like World Cup songs and Euro songs were always very cheesy. They were often sung by the team. And then it sort of started moving more into kind of like indie pop music in the late 90s. And I remember, England had 3 Lions, It's Coming Home. They had Vindaloo. And Scotland had a song called Don't Come Home Too Soon. Do you remember it?
I don't remember that one.
So
was that kind of late 90s?
Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me. Who sang it? I'm going to look it up now. It was sung by it was Amitri. Don't Come Home Too Soon.
Hey,
and
well, that's good because they are from Scotland.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's always good to have the World Cup song sang by them. So I did want to bring this up because apparently Amitri, the lead singer, still gets hate for this. I just want to read you some of the lyrics. So, like, I think you must have heard things like the John Barnes rap, you got to hold and give at the right time, the singing for England, or we're going to score one more than you, and all that. So let's go through some of the lyrics for Don't Come Home Too Soon by Amitri. So long, go on and do your best. That's the opening line. The world may not be. I'm not gonna sing it how they did it. I'm just gonna read it in like I would in a kind of like very pessimistic sounding Berkshire accent. The world may not be shaking yet, but you might prove them wrong. Even long shots make it, and there was a harmony there. Even long shots make it. What a line! Even long shots make it. And I don't care what people say. We can laugh it all away. I disagree with that. But if I have a dream at all, it's best for once you won't be on that stupid plane, and the world may not be shaking yet, but you might prove them wrong. Again, even long shots make it, but it's the chorus. It's just don't come home too soon. Repeated, and eventually, like in a song when it really starts to build up emotionally, there's like a backing kind of like vocal. The backing vocal for this, along with just don't come home too soon, was I don't care what people say. It's got to be like this person was said, write us a World Cup song, right?
Make it realistic.
But don't get their hopes up. Do you know what I mean? It's like saying, can you write a love song for this woman? But, try and put her off a bit.
But then if you look at other songs from Amitri's back catalogue, a lot of them would fit with a Scottish World Cup campaign. We've got Kiss This Thing Goodbye. We've got Nothing Ever Happens. We've got Be My Downfall and Not Where It's At. And then once they're on the plane home, it's Feelings. There we go. So I think Amitri was born for a career in Scottish World Cup championing.
Who looked at that list of songs and went, do you know who we need to lift the nation?
This is our man.
Who is it? The Proclaimers? God, no. God, no. Don't get them. Or we could do like a version of, 500 Miles to France, No. Go get Amitri. Don't get him. He's available.
Resurrect Marty Pello. Let's see what he's got.
Let's go back then. So what are your earliest memories of major tournaments in Scotland?
More the emotions that I remember rather than specific games. Like I remember I had this mug from the early 90s that said Aberdeen is magic, with like all the crowds cheering and everything like that, and I'd drink from that when football was on and stuff, and I had my little Scotland shirt. But I think so I'm going to say something which might not go down as well with the English audience, but perhaps my fellow Celtic brethren will feel me on this front, and that is when there is a major football tournament on, England dominates so hard on the coverage. And so it can be hard to get as excited, because when it gets to the sports section, there'll be like a nod to the other UK countries, and then it's like, right, we've done our due diligence there. Anyway, on to the Lions. Let's talk about what's happening. And so there's always been this weird thing growing up that I've had to lose in recent years, being married to an Englishman, of, Scotland gets beasted out. We barely got any coverage anyway. And so then you shift to supporting who is playing England for the rest of the tournament. But I've been told that is very disrespectful. So for the past 6 years, I have given a loose whoop and clacker to England when they are on, rather than going, go Iceland. So...
Yeah. Funny you mention Iceland. My friend Jakob was from Iceland, and he happened to be watching that England game in Scotland, not really knowing that there was much of a rivalry between Scotland and England. Wasn't that aware of it. Went to a pub in Glasgow and thought, oh, I hope they don't mind. And he says he didn't buy one drink all night. He had his Iceland shirt on and people just go mad for him. Yeah, they were loving it.
I don't know if he saw anyone that fit this description, but when it was that match and Scotland was doing its classic anyone but England thing, loads of people went to Iceland to shop, got the carrier bags from the checkouts and just put a head hole in them so they had an Iceland shirt. So I really hope he experienced that, because that is Scottish humour at its finest.
In regards to watching the games together, then, does he pull in support for Scotland for your games? Do you pull in a bit of English support for his for their games?
He is a much better sportsman than me. He's like, come on, Scotland, you can do it. And then as soon as the England game's on, I'm just like, yeah, go England. But also go the other people as well. So no, he's a lot more good-spirited about all of it.
Does that ever come across? Does that ever come across patronising though? Because see, my cousins, they're Scottish. Well, they were actually born in England, but then lived their whole life in Scotland. One of them very much identifies saying, look, I was born in England. I'm an England fan. The other one is like, no, I'm a Celtic fan. I don't even watch Premier League football. I'm Scotland through and through. And if I ever say like, hey, Scotland did well in the qualifiers, he's like, how fucking dare you? Don't talk to me like that, you little shit.
That's been a knockdown.
Yeah, he's like, I apologise actually for doing an accent. That is cultural appropriation right here for the first time on the podcast. But yeah, he's proper like, don't even tell me. I don't even want to hear that you thought Scotland played well. He just won't want to hear it at all. He's like, no, you hate us. You hate us. We hate you. That's it. Never, ever compliment us on anything.
I don't mind it so much because my husband is like a proper football fanatic. So he gives it the full analytical. Like he'll be saying stuff out loud and then 3 seconds later, the pundits are saying it and he gets to go, is there an echo? And he'll be very smug about everything. So it doesn't bother me because he's looking at it with kind of statistical eyes rather than just saying like, oh, good job, buddy. So I feel like I kind of learn more about the game watching it with him than watching it on my own, where I just shout rubbish commentary like, who's that even to? And things like that without any statistical analysis, whatever. Or my favourite is fucking skited it, which is where the ball goes.
I have heard that. I have heard that from my cousin.
I remember the first game I went to in person was when I lived in Edinburgh, and my ex was a Hearts fan, and I lived round the corner from Tynecastle, and it was Hearts Aberdeen. And so he said, oh, well, we should go. This would be a great introduction to you to football. And me being 20 and a people pleaser was like, okay, let's go. I'm sure it'll be a great time. And so we went, but I didn't know about football etiquette. I didn't know that being an Aberdeen fan, but at the home end with my Hearts supporting boyfriend, that I wasn't supposed to do anything when Aberdeen did a good thing at all. I didn't know that. And so the guy in front of me had like a pie getting crumpled in one hand and he was purple and he was just screaming at the referee. And then Aberdeen did a good thing and I went to stand up to celebrate. And I just felt a hand on each shoulder just get me back down in the seat and be like, celebrate afterwards, buddy. You don't want to do this.
It's very exciting we've got this tournament ahead of us, but you've got to tell me, you, as always in the podcast, it's everybody's favourite bit, we need a fantasy 5-a-side team. And it's quite hard, because we don't often do international teams. The only one we've had before was Josh Pugh talking about England. So this is a whole nation. This is Scotland. Have you got a five-a-side team? As always, we're not necessarily looking for the greatest 5 Scottish players of all time. We just want 5 players that mean something to you, Lynsey Smart. Who have you got in your squad?
Well, I'd like to preface this by saying I've run this squad past 2 people. So my first pass at making a 5-a-side squad, I ran past my husband and he said, you're not going to get very far with no defence or goalie, so you might want to rethink your team. So my formation was 6-4-0 was how we were starting out. So we've had a rethink, we've introduced some people, and then I ran the renewed team past my dad, as I regard my dad as the font of all knowledge of the history of Scottish football.
Okay.
It was not quite the team he would have chosen, but he said it was respectable. So that'll do me. Do you want to start in goals or start up front?
Let's start at the back. Like every good team, start at the back. Let's do it.
So I've picked Andy Gorham as my goalie.
Andy Gorham, okay. I was expecting Sullivan, but we've got Andy Gorham. Okay, I like it.
Got Andy Gorham. Surprised. So it was between him and I'm going to get the name wrong now. Is it Jim Leeton, the 60s one who had the most caps?
Oh, you got all the way back there. Oh wow.
Oh yeah, like half this team is incredibly old.
No, we're good with that.
So you have to remember, my main Scottish football influence is my dad. So I have heard more about 70s Scottish football than any other era of Scottish football. But yes, what sold it for me was I remember Andy Gorham because that was in my lifetime. And he is from the era of fantastic goalie shirts.
Yeah.
And so I have nostalgia of thinking of him doing a good job in a very jazzy number. He gets the spot.
Wonderful. So that's our keeper, Andy Gorham. Played for a long time. I'm just looking at, I like to look up these players as we record. And I'm just saying that he played for Scotland. Well, he played football internationally 1985 all the way to 1998. But he had a career that started at Oldham Athletic in 1981 and ended at Elgin City in 2004. My word. And he was playing regularly. He's actually getting games. Wasn't a Scott Carson sitting on the bench picking up Champions League Champions League medals? No, he had a
I thought you were going to say picking up fag packets.
Well, might as well be. But yeah, so that's we'll carry on with that. Andy Gorham in goal, a fantastic choice there.
And for defence, again, I've gone for one who was in my lifetime, and that is Alan Hansen.
Alan Hansen.
Solid. It was between him and Willie Miller, but I mainly remember Willie Miller as a manager and not as a player because that's before my time. Then in the midfield, we have John McGinn. Woo!
John McGinn, excellent.
Of course, he had to be in there. And then in midfield and striking, we have Kenny Dalglish.
Oh, of course, Kenny Dalglish, King Kenny.
Because if you have Kenny and John both there, both with their massive arses shifting people out the way, like that's just a battering ram of buttocks right there, and I'm here for it. And then you could probably guess who the striker is going to be, given the lineage and going back in time, but it is the one and only King Dennis Law. Is my striker.
Oh, now I wasn't actually going to say Dennis Law.
Who are you going to say?
I thought Ali McCoist.
See, I did think Ali McCoist because he got a lot of goals in, but Dennis Law is considered like the overall king. Yeah. And I think Pele said that he could have played for that mad era of Brazil in the kind of late 60s, early 70s. He's like, that's like the only non-Brazilian player who could have held up against these people. And I think he was on the team. I think he was one of the Trinity in the team that beat England in 1967, where we considered that made us the new world champions. And if you ever find a bank card in Scotland, try the pin 1967, because 9 times out of 10, that will get you that person's money out of their bank account, because it's what everyone's changing their pin to. So.
But you've already hit me with some amazing bits of information tonight. But I also want to go back to when we had a conversation before this evening, which is about why Scotland has "Yes Sir, I Can Boogie" as the anthem.
Our unofficial anthem.
But we'll get to that in a minute. But first of all, fantastic team. Quite a mature team, which will keep Alan Hansen happy because
they'll be doing the walk-in football rather than the regular football.
As Alan Hansen says, you don't win anything with children. I've done the cultural appropriation again. I do apologise.
That was more bang on though. The first one was definitely "Don't you talk to me about Scotland."
What? Mel Gibson trying to do a Scottish accent, so it's all fine. But a fantastic team. I love that it got checked. This has been checked first,
ratified,
and that it's actually.
I was so worried about making an idiot of myself on this podcast, and I said to Dave Jeffries this morning, I was like, I don't feel qualified to go on this podcast, but then Scotland doesn't feel qualified to get into most competitions, so I guess we're already off on a winning foot.
Well, look, I mean, I should have sent you some episodes before. We've had some great examples of this being an absolute mess, this five-a-side team. The last episode, or one of the last episodes we put out, was Katie Price, not that one, the comedian, who put Danny DeVito in her team purely for his love for Arsenal. We've had Maisie Adam, who couldn't accept one keeper, so decided to mash them up into some kind of scientific project. We've also had just a team of strikers before. I like that you've got the balance all the way through. I've had teams without goalkeepers. I'm always about the defender. I'd be happy with 5 defenders in a team. Genuinely,
to be fair, that is normally the England strategy under Southgate, and they do consistently get pretty far. So
yeah, that's true. That's very true. And ironically, I absolutely hate that.
Don't let anything in. I know.
I hate that.
His strategy is just wait and then try and nick a goal at the end rather than trying to build a lead to make it hard to catch. He's just like, no, stop anything from going in and then try and swing it at the end. True. But it does consistently get them far. It's just not very fun to watch rather than a really scrappy team who's like, for my freedom and my country. And I prefer that. I like the people who are just absolutely going for it. And that's why I love international football, because you get teams which wouldn't normally get much telly coverage or anything just going absolutely wild on the attack because they've got nothing to lose, and it makes it so much more fun to watch.
Oh, I fully agree. But look, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. But I can't let you go without telling me exactly why "Yes Sir, I Can Boogie" became the unofficial anthem of Scotland, and it remains so as well going into this tournament. Where did that all come from?
This is because of an Aberdeen FC player called Andrew Considine. And he had his stag do a few years back, and his mates thought it would be hilarious to get everyone dressed up in fancy dress with Andrew dressed up as a kind of tarty milkmaid. And they recorded a music video for "Yes Sir, I Can Boogie." And Andrew's got full makeup on, and he's in his wee kind of Ann Summers outfit, getting very saucy with everyone. They've clearly had about 60 bevies before going into this, but it's very well choreographed, which makes me suspicious. But I think he's actually going to be on the Euros team this time as well. I think he's one of the defenders on the Scotland team. But the Scotland squad thought it would be hilarious, given the existence of this video, to try and make that song the unofficial anthem of the Scotland team. And Scotland, being a country full of absolute lads, was just like, yeah, absolutely, this can be our new song. So I have no idea what our current official tune is, but everyone is singing "Yes Sir, I Can Boogie" to respect Andrew Considine in drag. It was very sexy in drag, might I say, as we previously discussed. Better in drag than he is not.
We won't go into that, but on that bombshell, Lynsey, thanks so much. Genuinely good luck to Scotland in the Euros. I mean that genuinely about 30%.
You say anything about my teams. Good luck to England as well, and that is sincere. As soon as Scotland get knocked out, I'll at least touch an England shirt. I might not put it on, but
I mean, as love for England that goes, I mean that's quite powerful. I might touch an England shirt. That's about as best as we're going.
Just to round off, there is one photo of me in an England shirt, and it was during whatever football was on in the summer of 2018, which I'm guessing must have been World Cup. Yeah. And I was in Cardiff at the time. My husband lived in Bristol. I know.
So you're
I was a Scots person in
a
Wales wearing an
Scotsman
England shirt.
in Wales. How are you here in Wales in an English
Um,
shirt?
because the game was on and my husband wanted to go and watch it. So we went to a bar and he had his England shirt on for it. And I think they won that match. We went out for cocktails afterwards. And he said, it would mean the world to me if I could get you to put the England shirt on just so I can take a picture and then you can take it off again. And we never have to do this again. I just want one token of this. And we'd only been going out for about 6 months. I was like, all right, go on, then I can be a sport. I put it on, and I also put on his sunglasses, which were perfectly round. I had bleached, short, flicky hair at the time, and I was pulling a sad face. I looked like Jimmy Savile in an English shirt. So this is the only image we have of me being nice towards England is just casually looking like Jimmy Savile with a sad face on.
Oh wow! Oh
It
well.
was a lot. I'll wear a Villa shirt though. We can do that.
We can do that. We could do that. Well, Lynsey, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it. It's been great fun.
That's quite all right. Well, thank you for having me on.
Football. At the end of the day. Football. It's a funny old game. It's a game to us. Comedians talking about football. Comedians talking about football. Comedians talking about football.